Oh my, it's Kelly White.
Hey, it's James Van Prague.
What are you up to?
Thinking about changing the world.
Me too. We should do a show together.
What would it be about?
Let me show you.
The James and Kelly Show.
Hi, Kelly White. Hey, it's Kelly White.
Hi, honey. How are you today?
Good, honey. How are you in the Midwest?
Well, believe it or not, it's 79 degrees here today.
Amazing. And it snowed like, what, 2 days ago? There was snow or 3 days
Yeah,
ago?
yeah. It's crazy, but it's so pleasant and wonderful to have this. And especially tonight's a very auspicious night.
Yes, tell everybody, welcome everybody. And this is a very special time. You texted me about 11, right after my soul care today. And I knew there was a full moon coming around here, but I didn't know when it was. So you texted.
Tonight is a supermoon, which is a rare thing, which means it's as close to Earth as they come. Only 7% of full moons are supermoons, but it's a pink moon.
What does that mean?
I'm going to tell you. Okay, this is really funny, but according to the Farmer's Almanac, by the way, of which I read now, I am not kidding you. Oh, yeah. I read it now. I didn't even know what it was. Now it's like I read it. It's about moss pink flowers that grow in the spring. And that's how they call this the pink moon. Moss pink flowers. Now you're a gardener.
I know. Look
this up. Moss pink flowers. Now, what's interesting about a pink moon, because it is very rare, a pink moon means changes, progress, fertility. It means manifesting your dreams. Okay, this is all good. Adaptability, setting your goals. So that's all what the pink moon is. Now let's add the full moon, shall we, in Scorpio. So Scorpio, as we know, is very intense. And a full moon is normally very intense. And you add Scorpio to that. And tonight is going to be, well, you would have felt it the last couple, 2 or 3 days, right?
Definitely.
I mean, and going forward.
Last night I felt it very, very much so.
Very strongly. So Scorpio is intense. It means death and transformation, actually. I mean, bottom line is it's deep emotions. And this full moon, believe it or not, is opposing Uranus, which is not a good thing. Uranus is, the planet of surprise. And it squares, which is like a squaring off of Saturn. And Saturn is the old ways. It doesn't want to be screwed with. It's karma.
It sounds like old relations are going to start changing.
So absolutely, James. This is a potent time for transformation in relationships and in finding a job. Let's say your job doesn't work any longer. Believe me, you're going to find something else. It means, too, also to be rebellious. It's got a rebellious attitude about this one. And also, so it means this. It means you want to trust yourself to change and grow. That's what we're doing now. Trusting yourself to change and grow and be willing to adapt and redirect your energy. Okay, so you can do what you planned on doing when you incarnated. This is going to be a big time for growth for that. Now, at the same time, I just want to mention that Mars is in Cancer for the next 6 weeks. Now, Mars is aggressive. It's intense. It's a planet of war. It hates Cancer. Cancer's the mother, the moon. I mean, it's water. It's, it's sentimental. So for the next 6 weeks, emotions are going to be like kind of intense. But anyway, right now, the other good thing here is at the same time, Venus is traveling in its own sign of Taurus, and that's going to bring us self-worth. So even though you're going to be making some changes, you're going to feel good eventually of making these changes. Go ahead and make these changes. It's time it's time for that. Now, let me tell you, the last thing I want to mention is what this moon is good for tonight, okay? So this is a great time if you want to do a liver cleanse or a detox. It's great for that. It's great for getting into because it's Scorpio, the
Can I
hidden.
start tomorrow to do the detox?
Yeah, you can start
Okay.
tomorrow. Yeah, I'm with you. Um, and it's a great time because it's in Scorpio to look at your hidden side, look at your shadow
Shadow.
side. So you want to look at the shadow and you want to, really allow yourself to, if whatever issues you have, just be
Without
honest.
judgment. Without
No
judgment. Just look at
judgment.
it.
Just be honest with yourself. So
Uh,
it's time to let go of anything that's been holding you back. A great thing to do this time is to listen to music that will trigger happy emotions, because what you want to do is set this stage up for you to have gratitude and to be happy and to feel good about things in the middle of change. Okay, so set that up. It's a great time to cleanse your crystals and set the intention of your crystals to adapt to change, and to, if you're going to do a detox, give it that love that it needs. So set the intention that you want during this time for your crystals.
Kelly, excuse me 1 second. And so the crystal, if you put them outside,
Put
correct?
them out in the moon.
And
Yes.
for how long do you keep them out there? Just one
I
night
do
or
it overnight. I just do it
overnight?
overnight.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll do that later.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I have so many big ones, but the smaller ones that I use daily, I put out during this
And
time.
the moon gravitational pull will take out the toxins and bring in the light, bring the
Yes.
energy. Okay.
It cleanse, and you're setting the stage for your crystals. You're actually telling the crystals what you need them to do, so it's a really good thing. And the last thing that I always suggest is take a bowl of water and set it outside and put your intentions into the water. Because if you want to start a detox program or let go of a relationship, set that intention in this water. It's so powerful right now. You can feel the energy. And then drink the water. Put it in your bath. Water your plants.
I did that with the last full moon. I did it 2 days ago, and I told you I had it, and I watered my plants, and the plants were like going crazy. And that particular plant, seriously,
I love it.
weird,
I love it.
weird,
There's
weird.
a lot of things we can do. So enjoy this big moon. So tonight
Thanks.
we have a really interesting subject, and I want to break it down in 4 ways. Because we have 2 guests that are going to come on and talk about it. James is going to start, and he's going to talk about completion of suicide, the souls that have completed it. We say now completed. I got in big trouble for saying committed, and I will not make that mistake again. I'll try not to make that mistake. It's not a crime. So it's completion of it. So James is going to talk about it from the soul standpoint. I'm going to talk about it for the family and friends that remain. And then our guest, Dr. Shirley Impellizzeri, is going to talk about it from her point of view. And then we have another guest, Karie Gonia, who's going to talk about it from her point of view, a family constellation. So it's going to be a fascinating program.
And the number one question I'm always asked about for the past 40 years is suicide. What happens to suicide? Do they go to hell? Are they lost forever? Are they earthbound? And I admit, as everyone, when I didn't know enough, when I first was my first book, Talking to Heaven, I wrote a chapter on suicide. And at that point in my time, my life, my career, I didn't know enough about it, and I didn't put it in accurately. I used my Catholic background, which was not good because it was a bias. And I recognize that, and I wish I could reprint it, but I couldn't. So my thoughts have changed, as they do. Our thoughts, because of experiences we have, change over the years. And mine has changed over suicide because, number one, I would say we are souls having an experience. So when someone goes, no matter how they go, the soul is released. The soul is free. They don't just disappear. They're not dead. There's no such thing as death. You can't kill energy. And sometimes it doesn't matter how you leave the body, because you usually don't feel it when you're leaving the body anyway. But humans are caught up in how you die. But it's very easy. It's like the breath in and breath out. So suicide has changed over the many, many years that I've worked, depending on the situation itself. So a suicide, like many things in life, there's really intention behind the act. So if somebody completed suicide, whose Google stock went down and they jump out the window, that's very different than somebody who had a mental illness. It would be handled very differently. And the most important thing to realize and know is that the spirit world always know what's happening. They're not in time, they're outside of time. So they're very, very aware that that soul will be coming over. And there are really rescue souls, if we want to call them that, whose job it is, whose mission it is to help those newly arriving souls who have left that way. And to really bring them, for example, to a clearinghouse, a hospital, a place of counseling. And depending again on this type of suicide it was, if it was an emotional upset, then that's handled a different way. They clear the mind of the situation. I've had many suicides in my life, in my family, actually. And so it's interesting. And Number one, we come back for a certain time. Our soul comes back to learn lessons, and we come back for some lessons that'll take 10 years. Maybe a lesson is to go through birth and you're done. Maybe a lesson is to live 20 years and go by an accident. Maybe 40 years, maybe 90 years. We cannot base it on human time. It's on the soul experience. So maybe the soul only needs a certain time. So it's a school. It's classes we take. It's to learn to expand the soul, our awareness, our wisdom. Now, I always say it's never good to cut school because we always have to learn various lessons. And we find that before we come back into this incarnation, we really gather with our wise guides and teachers and spiritual teachers, if you will, and we go through our soul's plan, and we go through a kind of a curriculum that we will learn and go through in this wonderful time. We've had this, really, we've been given this gift of life here, because it is a gift. And it's a time with the other souls that you know, that you're united, you're connected with your soul group, those friends and family members who you've been through many lifetimes before, and you've taken on different roles, such as a mother or a grandmother or a best friend or a partner. You take on these different roles each lifetime to learn different aspects of the relationship of the soul, aspects of love, how to live through life, how to believe in ourselves, how to get through many things in this physical dimension, hard dimension, because it's not a real place, it's a hard place to be. And so I think we're always giving a choice. I think so. I have many beliefs about this, but I do believe there are many ways about this with suicide. Someone who pleads suicide when they're 80 years old and they lived a full life, but they have a disease that's going to just get senility or dementia, and they want to let themselves go. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. They lived their life. It's okay to go, and there's no quality of life. I believe when there's no quality of life personally, when there's no quality of life, it's okay to go. A friend of mine did that, actually, and she said, first thing she said was, she came back the day she did it, because we had an agreement to come back to each other, and she said, I said, well, but did you find yourself when you went there? Did you find? She goes, oh my God. She goes, if I knew how great it was, I would have done it a long time ago. She said, no, it was a courage for me to do it. I completed most of my life there. I didn't really have to learn much more. And so it was good in her respect. But someone who's, just 20 years old and has a date that doesn't show up, and they go out and do that, it's a different situation. And sometimes there are suicides, and Shirley, Dr. Shirley will be able to talk about some more, but I think there are some times where there are suicides just want to end the emotional pain, and they think that'll be it, they'll be gone, it'll be finished. I remember there was a lady that came to me as a client from South Africa many years ago when I was living in LA doing readings, and she sat in my room, and I did this reading, and this young man, Peter, came through. His name was Peter. He was 23, big, tall guy, and he actually brought me to an experience I never had. I became him. And he went up into this tree, and he hung himself in a tree, and he popped out of the top of his head. He wanted to get out of the pain. And he popped out the top of his head, and he was fully conscious. And he said, oh my God, what have I done? And the first thing he said was, what is my mother going to say when she finds me? Oh my God, the people left behind. And Kellee, you're going to talk about that in a little bit, but it's many times the people left behind. My brother-in-law also suicided because it was, again, an emotional problem, or there was some addiction problem, or something going on there. A lot of emotional stirring up. And he did also come through, and he felt he had to work a little bit on self-love. He didn't have self-love. He had to work on himself with self-love. And then he was really worried about the family left behind. But I want to say something too, because people always think suicide, that's it. That's the worst thing. A soul can never be harmed. You can never harm a soul. A soul will not go to hell and burn. There's no such thing. I mean, you will not be harmed. Somebody asked me the other day if I saw Dreams May Come, and with Robin Williams. I did see a little bit of it. I didn't see all of it because they didn't handle suicide the right way. And two of the producers came to me to consult with me when they wrote that, again, many years ago. And I did tell them about the vividness and what spirit world would look like. And they captured that, but they didn't capture suicide. But they portrayed someone as lost. They're never lost. Never. And the best thing you do for a suicide person is just send them love. Because if they chose to leave that way, and the spur of the moment, let's say, and they're so sorry what they left behind with the people, what you do is to help them heal that, send them love. Because if you're sending them love, they feel it and they know it, and that'll help them to love themselves because you love them. So it's a good thing to do. And I just say that again, no one can be hurt. I'm sorry, will that repeat a life? It depends. I don't know if before lifetime planning that the soul group got together with the guides and in the group, one of them, they all had to go through an experience of suicide once when leaving early. And one of them might have volunteered and said, you know what, for me to grow spiritually, I will complete that. And so you're going to learn about what it's like, from that point of view. So maybe that was destined to happen. I'm not going to say absolute and say, no, it can't be that way. It might. It's a possibility. You won't know until we pass over, but it's a probability. So there's many things, but the most important is that we can never be harmed, never be hurt. And please send them love if they do. Again, that's all I can say. That's all I can
Yeah,
say.
no, I mean, you said that so beautifully,
Mhm.
and I'm going to talk about the survivors of the
Yeah,
families
please.
because I deal a lot like you do, James, with both sides. I mean, from the person who was in so much pain that they completed a suicide, um, and also the family members that come to me for readings. And so, what I've learned about the ones that are left behind, and so this will affect a lot of people that have been touched by suicide. For them, the people that are left behind, it's a mystery often. They're devastated, they're shattered, they may feel like they've lost their mind. They feel isolated, they're terrified, traumatized, hugely traumatized. They're alone, they're usually in shock. They feel guilt.
Guilt.
Guilt is a huge one. They feel
Yeah.
bewildered, they feel despaired, they're heartbroken. So there's a lot of trauma
And
that
also, I
comes
could have
with that.
saved them, right, Kelly? That also, right? I could have saved them. What could
Oh,
I have done to have
I hear
saved
this one
them?
all the time. I could have saved them if only I hadn't gone to the store. If only I had gone and picked up the phone. If only I hear this probably every single day. And what happens with this is people, the survivors have a post-traumatic stress disorder. They'll have a PTSD. They'll have emotional, enormous guilt, intrusive thoughts, panic attacks. They're going to feel often shocked. They may have nightmares. They may startle easily. They may avoid people. And also, on top of that, you may feel the ones that are survived abandoned, feel shame. You may feel rage. You may feel anger. It's a complicated grief. This is not a normal way to die. So it is a complicated grief. And so you have to work with continued bitterness and anger and sadness and all of the questions. And then you have to wonder, you have to ask yourself and be really honest, do you have those suicidal thoughts? Because that's going to be very important. And there's a really interesting place that you can look up. It's called the American Association of Suicidology, the American Association of Suicidology. And you may find some really interesting things about this because your thought might be you might want to join your loved one, and that's not the
Kelly, just
thing
to
to do.
interrupt you by saying also, you should never be embarrassed to ask for
Right.
help. If you lost your
Absolutely.
loved one to suicide and you
A-
could think of those thoughts, ask for help.
And one of the things that I really want to talk about here is definitely if you are a survivor of this, you want to seek out other survivors. You want to know other people that have gone through this. You want to go to a support group. You want to surround yourself with people who you feel very comfortable with. You have to accept that things have changed. That was who you were before, and then who you are now after this. Okay, you definitely need to seek a therapist that understands suicide, possibly a medium that specializes in it or that understands it, because that's a big one right there. Um, and You have to take care of yourself. You have to remember to eat and sleep, and you still have to remember to take care of yourself. And just remember, as James said, nobody goes to hell. There's no such thing. Okay, nobody goes to hell here. And we also, if anybody is thinking about this, or if they have family members, because once that door opens, and Shirley's going to talk about that, once that door opens to suicide, it opens kind of an energetic door for other family members. In fact, Karie, when Karie's on in a few minutes, and we're going to talk to her about that too. Um, but there is a suicide hotline number. Renee, would you put that suicide hot? There you go.
Right.
The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. So if you or somebody else that has contemplating this, please, please, please call that number. Okay,
Because
definitely.
it won't be just roses when you pass. So you're gonna, for many people, it's
Yes.
gonna be, wow, what I leave behind. What I had so much opportunity. Look what I
Well,
could have
let's talk
had.
about that. Yes,
Well, it's
yes.
also, I've seen the spirit would show me things. Say I left early on before my time, and it's interesting. Sometimes I say I've come in before my time. I rushed back on the lifetime before it was really my time. I wanted to come back and finish things, but they were out of sync, which is interesting.
Wow.
But they say sometimes when they leave, not everybody. This is again individual cases, and they'd show me. They said these are the opportunities I had, which I stayed on Earth I would have had the love life. I would have had this house. I would have had this incredible job. I would travel. All these things were going to happen to them, but they didn't take the time to be here and see that. If they just loved themselves a bit more, didn't listen to people, love themselves. What other people think of you is none of your business. It doesn't define who you are at all. And be true to yourself. And there's always help. You're not alone. No one is ever alone. Whether you think physically, you're never alone. You have a phone there, and the spirit is always with you. But no one's ever alone. I mean, I have Kellee, like she's on my bat phone. I talk all the day. So we're never alone.
Never alone. So let's bring Shirley on. Should we bring Dr. Shirley in? Shirley, are you ready?
What's her background?
So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Shirley. Shirley and I have worked together for many years. She's a psychologist in Beverly Hills for, I don't know, at least 20 years. She wrote a book called
Why Can't I Change? It's a great book.
It's a great book.
I just picked it up my bookstuff last night, not knowing who it was. What a great title. And it was Shirley's.
It was Shirley. And Shirley specializes in somatic experience. So you know how James and I are always talking about, somatic of the body, trauma that's stored in the body. This is Shirley. So Shirley, welcome, Dr. Shirley Impellizzeri.
Yay! Oh, she's so gorgeous. Yay!
Oh my God, I'm so happy to be here.
Hi, Cheryl.
Welcome home.
Thank you. You guys have been doing an incredible job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to join you guys though tonight. This is so fun.
Yay!
I mean, the topic is a tough one, right?
Yeah.
But
where do you stand on all of it?
I mean, I really love what both of you have said, but James in particular, what you said about, no judgments. It's so hard if you haven't lived in someone's shoes, and I know that's a cliche saying, but it's so true. We don't know what someone is going through, and it's very easy to say, to maybe have a thought or a judgment or a criticism with someone, and we need to understand that they are in so much pain that many times suicide is just to alleviate the emotional pain. And if you have never been in that pain or had ever a suicidal thought, then you can't relate to how they felt, so it's just, as you said, James, or both of you said, to just send them love. It's such a difficult thing to try and understand.
Okay, Shirley, if you let me interrupt for 1 second. I went to therapy, and it was one of the greatest things. I love therapy, and I ended up doing the therapy for the therapist, but that's okay. But she said to me something which I thought really stuck with me. She said, "Listen, everybody has their own reality. So what's your reality and your partner's reality are two different realities, and you got to respect people's reality. Everyone's reality is very different, so you can't impose your reality on that other person." So same thing.
Exactly. And there's so many other factors, even looking at COVID, we all thought that maybe the incidence of suicide had risen, and they haven't. The reason shows that they haven't. That doesn't mean that there aren't more people on the brink or there are more people thinking about it. And there's so many other factors involved, as I think Kellee, you said, it's a complicated issue. If you feel lonely, when you both were saying you're never alone. I mean, I have to, and I'm very open with my past and my troubles that I attempted when I was 15. Because
suicide 15. Yeah.
Right, because I was taken to live to another country, and I didn't have anyone to connect to, and felt no one could see me or hear me or understand me. And at the core of attachment is to feel seen by someone, to feel understood by someone. And so there's so many different factors involved.
I was going to do it 2 years ago when I had my divorce, when I broke up. Yeah. I mean, I got to a place in a parking lot and I said, what am I living for? There's nothing living for anymore. And all this stuff is running in your head, and I just had nothing to live for. And it was like, but then of course I got back into my body again. But you're at the end, you're like a wall, you hit a wall. It's like, what, but I know better, but it was just, I understand it.
Right. You hit a wall and you think that, one, that's your only option. Two, that's the only option that's going to stop the incredible pain. And something about pain is physical pain and emotional pain run on the same circuitry in the brain. That's why people get addicted to painkillers, because you may start taking it for back pain, but if you haven't worked through your emotional, your wounds, your childhood wounds and trauma, it feels really good. I mean, it feels better than good. And that's why people keep then taking pain pills and they get addicted to them, because suppresses the emotional pain as well.
My cousin Patricia was very close to it, taught metaphysics when I was a kid, and that's where I learned about it all. She completed suicide at 50, and she had just broken up with this man. She went through a divorce after 30 years of marriage, and met this other guy, and he took advantage of her, and she put herself in a car and turned the gas on. That was it. And yeah, and she knew this stuff. Yeah, it's emotional pain for sure. I read recently, Dr. Shirley, here that mostly it's the increase. It's really kind of scary. 70% increase since 2016 of young women between the ages of 10 to 16, 70% higher than 2016. Yeah, 10 to 19 years of age from 2010 to 2016, 70% higher, more women. And the number one way they say is through firearms. Mostly men firearms. Women are mostly pills, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because they say emotional pain, number one, a breakup, substance abuse, health crisis, financial, criminal legal problems, and then loss of housing, believe it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's a lot of a despair, such a huge, deep despair.
And having no hope.
Right. And many times it's a fuck you to someone else.
Yeah.
Pardon my French. Do you guys curse on this show? Because we did when we were.
But I told you that like minutes ago. My brother-in-law, he was emotional. It was definitely get out of the pain. It was that fuck you to family. Sure. A lot of times it is. You're right. A lot of times it is.
It can be, and how it's done can also be that too.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's dyadic in nature. Often it's opposing somebody else. Right. It can be. It doesn't have to be.
Well,
but it can be.
It can be when it's done in a way where you know who's going to find you, or you know.
And you hurt someone intentionally.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because you also setting up karma. You're setting up karma for future life. Hello, right? You're setting up that karma.
Well, and it's not knowing how to deal with emotions, not knowing how, particularly anger. We have this idea in our society that anger is a 4-letter word, and it is such an important emotion to feel. It's life force. Now, how we deal with it, the behavior of anger is very different. But those are two separate things that many times get associated. So then we become very afraid of anger. Mm-hmm. And suicide, depression is anger, kind of
turned inwards.
Yeah. So it's such an important thing to reach out, like both of you have said, and of course I'm a huge proponent of it. Therapy, and talk to someone and know that you're not alone.
And I have a question for you, Shirley. If have you had clients who have attempted it and it didn't work, didn't go through? Have you ever had that experience?
I have had clients that have been close, but not that have attempted, but that have been very.
I had one who jumped out of San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge, and lived, and was very happy he lived. Two others too that said they went and someone it didn't work or something, and they're both very happy that it didn't work.
Can you imagine just that fall alone, while they're still very conscious? Oh, I made a mistake. Oops, I shouldn't have done this.
And I'm all about, at the end of my life, if I'm not able to live a full life, I'm ready to go. That's fine. But, it's funny, Brian and I talk about this. Well, make sure we have enough of the medication, because you don't want to be like choking to death. You just want to go out. Really.
Well, I have to tell you, what you said, James, about quality of life is true. There's some people that are so afraid of death that, would rather live regardless. And I'm with you. It's quality of life, because I think I never fully connected here. So I know. I think I know what the other side feels like.
That's why we're on the show.
I would say this. I would say as a kid, don't celebrate my birthday, but if I die, have a huge party. As a little kid. I know.
We don't belong here.
I'll analyze that later. But because as you said, it's such an important message for listeners to know that the other side, it's not a punishing thing. It's not. I was brought up Catholic, so it's a sin and stuff, and it makes it even worse for people that feel so desperate and in so much despair to even say it,
right? To
even trust someone to say anything.
So guess what? We have Karie Gonia now. So let me explain Karie Gonia. Karie is a family constellation facilitator and an intuitive.
Guru,
she's been doing
I'd say.
Family constellation, which you guys are going to hear about in a minute, for 20 years. She's the best. You're going to love her. Welcome, Karie Gonia.
Hi. Oh, I'm so happy to be here.
Nice to meet you, Karie.
Nice to meet you. I've heard so many lovely things about you.
Oh, you're so sweet. You look like an alien, of course.
I know.
What
I mean,
star
do any of
system?
us belong here?
No.
I feel like I know
No,
you already.
no.
I really do.
I know. Okay, can I just say though, those statistics are staggering. I got in right when James was talking about those statistics.
Yeah.
That blows my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. And
Yeah.
Amazing.
lately, a lot lately with, God only knows the society too.
Well, Karie, tell us about family constellation and your thought and your point of entry into
And what
suicide.
that is, because I don't have no idea what that
Mhm.
is.
So, family constellation therapy was started. He was actually a German psychologist. So, it started, I think, around like the mid 90s. So, he grew up in Nazi wartime Germany, really struggled in his youth with belonging and not knowing his place. And then he went to South Africa and studied with the Zulus for 20 years and figured out that they weren't struggling like we were. And so, he kind of did all this research and he figured out that he was a family therapist, that they weren't struggling because if somebody did something bad in the family system, they didn't kick them out. So they all worked together to honor the right to belong in the family. Everyone had balance, everyone was equal. We obviously don't do that, especially historically, generationally. If you kill yourself, we don't talk about you. We have anger, we have shame. It's that way in family systems for addiction also. And so family constellation goes, I always tell people it's kind of a complicated theory, but it really goes to the heart of trauma, kind of unkinks those hoses where they've been kinked generationally, and it gets you moving forward.
Wow.
Now, would
So
you say a family constellation is like family ancestry? Like it happens in one generation and the other generation, the other generation? Okay.
Yep. So it really goes to unkink the hose in terms of inherited generational trauma.
Up to how many generations?
Yes.
Sorry, Kellee.
It's funny. I feel like there's two camps for this. There's been a lot of data that has come out in the last couple of years where they've traced it 7 generations, and then I've started to see articles the more they learn about epigenetics that it has been traced back to 14 generations. So
Wow.
typically in family constellation therapy, you'll work with the parents' line, the grandparents' line, sometimes the great grandparents if they were alive when you were born, and then not that often like 4th or 5th back.
So you were telling me a story, I think it was yesterday, Karie, a couple of days ago, where you had a client whose great grandmother or somebody had completed suicide in a certain way, and that the other person, young, did the same thing. Like huge generations difference.
Yeah, it was 2 generations. So it was her great granddaughter. This client came, she was in my office. She was telling me this wild story that it was kind of a fable in the family system. This great grandmother got labeled crazy. She climbed up on this balcony in this gorgeous, affluent Victorian home, jumped off the balcony, drank a bunch, took a bunch of pills, jumped off the balcony and died. And then 2 generations later, the granddaughter tried the exact same way, but wasn't successful, but did not connect the dots until I was like, you just told me that story like 15 minutes ago. And so typically in my work, I'll see it at the same age, like the same age range.
Wow.
I mean,
does the energy carry through down the generations?
Yeah. So the premise of my work is really about belonging, everyone having a place in the family system. And so back then, nobody talked about anything. So there were secrets. Everything just got kind of swept under the rug. So that's what starts kinking those hoses.
And also, Karie, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
They say that, of course, like certain addictions or certain, let's say, health issues like diabetes or alcoholism goes through the family generations, goes through the family line. Would you say it's the same type of thing with suicide?
It's funny. I watched the Hemingway documentary a couple years ago.
I got the bullfighting. I could not go any further.
I am so sensitive energetically. I was shocked that I was able to sit through it, but I have been fascinated by him. And I believe there are 7 or 8 suicides in that family system.
Wow.
But in the documentary, the granddaughter just kept saying nobody talked about anything. Nobody witnessed the addiction, the war trauma, the pain, the whatever. And so it just kept getting passed down and passed down and passed down. 7.
So it seems like, that famous saying, and forgive me, I'm paraphrasing, the sins of our father will be on the children. And I find that to be very, very true for the spirit world. And Kellee, we've talked about it when the mother, let's say, won't forgive the drunk driver that killed the son and won't forgive, that whole life won't forgive, that'll be passed on to the next generation. That sense of not forgiving, those lives will be blocked energetically.
Right.
Similar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, when you say constellations there, is it from the constellations, or why do you use that term?
That's a great question. I actually don't know why he coined it family constellation therapy.
Okay.
Yeah, he was doing family therapy for like 20 years. So yeah. I mean, the practitioner works within a morphogenic field, which is like the soul's consciousness within the family system. So that could be why.
And how do you go through working with somebody, if I might ask? How, like, someone's in session with you, like I'm going to have, how do you go about with the session? Just curious.
Yeah, so predominantly it's done in big groups of people. So let's say we were doing a constellation on Shirley. Shirley would actually kind of sit on the sidelines and someone would stand in the space, someone who didn't know her, and represent her mom, her dad, whatever she wanted to work on. And then she would actually be able to witness the constellation unfolding from like a different perspective. So I obviously with COVID, we're all one-on-one, but I do a lot of one-on-ones. And so when people used to come to my office, I would have all these different different colored foam feet, different sizes, different colors. And I do blind constellations. So nobody knew what they were standing on. So if I put in your mom and your dad, you would just select 2 feet, you would open them and put them on the ground, and then you would stand on them. And so once you're in the morphogenic field, I mean, it's not wild to us, but some wild stuff can happen.
I actually had a session with Karie, and I had no idea what to expect. I didn't understand anything about this. Shirley just said, you have to have a session. And
I
so
threatened you to an inch of your life, I
she
think, and I
did.
said,
That's
Kelly,
exactly
you
right.
have to.
So I'm in her office, and I'm standing on these plastic shoes, not having a clue what I'm
They're
doing.
like footprints.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, little
And
footprints.
all of a sudden, I fell to the side of the wall, and I felt somebody had stabbed me in the back. And what had happened is my great-grandfather had killed a Cossack, and my father had a lot of issues with it, and the energy knocked me to the wall. Yeah. And that was just the first session. I had a second session. I still had more stuff to release.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, it was a powerful, I'll never forget that as long as I live. But what it did for me is it allowed me to make the movement that I needed to do in my life, to let go of a lot of things that I didn't know I was carrying.
And Karie, do you think that there are souls that come back? Obviously, I guess the answer is yes. That come back with their generational stuff, the trauma, and they themselves come back in this lifetime to heal that soul group or that family trauma. They're the ones that chose to come back and heal it in this lifetime.
I do. I'm one of those people. Absolutely. How I knew I had spiritual gifts, I started dreaming about ancestors when I was like 3 or 4, and they'd give me all this information. I'd go tell my parents. Back in the 70s, early 80s, it wasn't cool. So my parents were like, be quiet. And then I was just obsessed with family systems. And then when Family Constellation found me, everything made sense. And I was able to clear so much. I mean, I go to regular therapy too. I think that part's really important. I do somatic work, but FCT literally just kind of like Kellee, it just opened the floodgates, and I really rushed forward when I started doing it.
Because you came into your nature, your true nature, right?
Yeah.
Your nature. Look at your eyes, you're so psychic. Look at your eyes alone tell you that, right?
I know, James, I want to do a constellation for you.
I love it. I'm such a mess. I love it. Yeah, right.
Oh, you're going to be blown away, James.
And let me ask you this. If you, for instance, like let's say Kellee had that experience, and if you're the practitioner working with her, would you pick things up that intuitively on top of what she's getting, and you'd be able to tell her what's happening at that point?
I do. I feel like my connection to spirit really helps me. I don't actually know a lot of family constellation facilitators. I've worked with a few that don't have that strong of a connection to the other side. And the ones that I have worked with that have a strong connection to the other side, I feel like I get so much more out of it. So there's a piece at the end. So like, Kellee, can I use you as an example?
Oh, please.
So after Kellee had that experience, what happens is then I'll have the practitioner, or I'll have the client actually turn and face the grandfather, whoever stabbed him, and really honor that trauma, witness that trauma. And so I actually just channel spirit. They tell me what to say. They call them healing statements or truth statements, and they're crazy accurate in family constellation therapy. So you just say short little choppy sentences, and that's when the hose unkinks and everything kind of comes up and out.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And in regard to suicide and the emotional trauma, so suicide, so you have had experiences where clients have cleared past generations from suicide. And do they ever have reasons? What other reasons besides just mentioned emotional reasons or financial? Any other reasons that completed the suicide that you found out in those generations, or that we don't know of? Or just curious.
That's a great question. I seem to attract a lot of addiction. There's a lot of addiction in the family systems, which it's just rampant, kind of in our parents' generation.
Alcohol, yeah.
I actually read this really interesting New York Times article years ago where this he was like 45, but when he was like 4 or 5, he started having dreams about being in the Holocaust camps. And so he would have these night terrors, and he didn't realize that he hadn't obviously been in the camps, but nobody in his family told him that his grandfather died in the camps. And so at 45, he subsequently killed himself because he just like was entangled in that trauma and nobody told him the truth. So I feel like my work is a lot about uncovering the secrets, you know.
Wow. Well, Karie, there's a question here. Valerie asked, can you break the attachment piece of the suicide in your family?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in my work, witnessing it, really witnessing it, because there's so much anger and there's so much shame historically with suicide, you know. And so again, it's like that energy just gets locked up and nobody talks about it and nobody honors what were they entangled with previously or what were they struggling with. So I think you can.
Yeah. Well, and from a psychological standpoint, it now opens that up as an option. When there's suicide in the family system, all of a sudden it becomes an option. So that's why it's not a coincidence that, a great grandparent did it and then an uncle did it. And so it opens up that option, even if you don't know about it, almost from an energetic standpoint.
But Melody here, from Melody, I just want to respond to her comment. She talked about she's planning suicide when her husband goes and he knows about her or something and it's too much pain, so he's going to go. I don't think that's the right reason to do a suicide, is because you're in pain. Because many times in this lifetime, the lessons that we go through in the physical vibration, the three-dimensional world, are hard lessons. They're tough ones. That's why we come back here, to experience those hard ones, because it's really the hard ones, the painful ones, that push us up, that really bring out to our core the goodness that we are. We look at ourselves. So suicide is really not an option when things get really hard on you emotionally, things don't work out. It's really an incredible opportunity to grow. So people have to go beyond that. They've got to grow. So Melody, it's not a good reason just to do suicide when it gets hard. That's when you're learning the most.
Yeah.
That's why I jump in there.
I always try and anchor with people too. Yes, we all come from trauma and inherited family system trauma, but we have strength, we have love, we have all their wisdom, we have all their guidance. And it's like tapping into that part is really important, especially right now.
And Karie, what you said is so great. And it also goes to the point of, I like to look at things very different perspective, that the family that surrounds you, your ancestors who are really pulling for you in this lifetime, and maybe you can do things I couldn't do, I wasn't able to do, so I'm going to live through you, and they will push you to do things they weren't able to do in the lifetime, accomplishments they weren't able to, but you have the opportunities, and they're on the other side helping you to do that. So they want you to succeed, but they couldn't, perhaps.
I always tell people to honor them by having a big and beautiful and easy life. That's it. Just take steps towards that.
I think you first got to love yourself and just honor what's inside you and who you are, and not listen to anybody else about who you are. Who you are. That's, I think, the first step. And not trying to get that being judged by others or listening to other people for honoring who you are. You got to be who you are. Everybody is different. I believe everybody is like a snowflake. We're all unique. And when you have a lot of snow, as Kellee knows, you have a lot of snow. It looks beautiful. It's a beautiful scene. That's the world should be. The diversity.
Now, there's a great question here, and Roseanne Rizzuto asked this. What age do you tell a child that a loved one committed suicide? Or I'm going to say completed suicide. What age would you, Shirley, what do you think on that? What's your thought?
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one.
I'm not trying to work with kids in a therapeutic sitting. It's a tough one. It depends on how you talk about the other side. If you talk about the other side as, they went to another side where people don't live with bodies, but they, so then you can explain it that way. And then when they're older and they have the maturity to understand it, because of all the energetic thing that Karie and you've been talking about, that it kind of adds that in.
It might shock their system, so you really want to watch their system with that one. I would say
with anybody, you guys, with anybody at that age, younger age, and anybody who doesn't understand things, especially at that age, you really deliver to them in the age the way they'll understand it. So for a child, you say, you go to dreamland at night. You go to dreamland. Well, they go to dreamland now, and they're going to stay in dreamland. And then when they get older, just said, Kellee, then explain it to them. But sometimes they'll understand, not scare them, but just say they're
exactly.
Yeah, I think even the word child, I wouldn't say how the person passed on. when they, maybe at
Yeah.
18, 19, 20, when they're a little bit more mature, the teenage, the adult brain doesn't come online until 25.
Yes.
So it's not the teenage, it's, a little bit past the teenage as far as the connections for the brain being fully connected. So
Yeah.
unless they need to know I'm not sure what that reason would be. I wouldn't say how they passed on to a
Right.
child. Yeah.
I wouldn't go there. So one thing I do want to talk about.
Kelly, can I ask you a question really
You bet.
quickly?
Sure.
Okay, so suicide with families left behind or loved ones left behind. What do you think as far as, I know there's some people, of course, dealing with grief, especially if it's a child that passes over, that they become professional grievers, right?
Oh,
As far
yeah.
as suicide, which is, like I said before, feels unnatural and they're filled with guilt and resentment, what do you suggest people do to honor that soul that did that? How should they behave, the family, in time when it goes a grieving process?
Yeah, after when you get through, or as you're grieving and getting through that, set up a memorial. Set up a memorial is lovely. Plant a rose bush. Go to their favorite place. Talk to them. They're there, as you said. Send them a lot of love and start appreciating them for when they were here. Start really appreciating all the things the experience that you had with them, the good experiences that you had with them. They don't want you to remember that final moment. They don't want to go there. They really want to make sure that that they love you and they know you love them, and honor that. I mean, what do you think, James?
I say exactly
Yeah.
that. Live the life that they wanted to live the
Yes.
things, the dreams they wanted to accomplish. You're going to do that for them. It's very important. And Karie, I have a question for you. It just popped in my head.
Yeah.
Along with your therapy work there, have you ever thought of people, or have they ever done where they've taken photographs of generations before and they've put them out in their house or where they live, and they speak to them, or they forgive them, or they have that relationship then with them? They've done that before?
Yeah, actually, why I was late was I was just in a constellation and I kept feeling like she was named after somebody, and I kept getting this name, Grandma Pearl, and she was like, but I said, it's your great grandma. And she was like, oh yeah, that was my great grandma on my dad's side. She raised my dad. And then I was like, but somebody's missing in the family system. And so the grandmother's sister had passed at like 7 or 9, but they named this girl after the great aunt, but never told her. And so she said she used to dream about her when she was little. And then I was like, hey, what trauma happened between 7 and 9 with you? And then her parents got divorced. She suffered this massive loss. Well, the great aunt died at 7 to 9. She got sick at 7, died at 9. So I was like, same thing. Get a photo, write a letter, like really honor them. So I have clients that set up altars after doing constellation therapy, and it's crazy. It's so beautiful to watch how quickly their life moves forward just by witnessing, oh, you were here, you were in the family, like having that love. In my work, they call it orders of love, like having that flow restored, because then they don't have to keep looking backwards. They actually get to look forward. So it's really common in my work, which is beautiful.
It sounds beautiful.
Right. Wow. Well, if anybody wants to work with the three of us, we are, Shirley and Karie and I are doing a webinar on
Are you? When is that?
We are. It's on May 22nd. It's called Healing Roots, Healing Your Roots. And I'm going to be talking about it from a spiritual standpoint of why did you incarnate? I'm going to talk about spiritual contracts, sacred contracts with our family and our loved ones. And Shirley, what are you going to be discussing during this 7-hour webinar?
Talking about how the plants of self-esteem, the seeds of self-esteem get planted, our inner child, and what happens in the attachment, how important that attachment connection is, and how to start to heal. Those
from childhood on, right?
Yeah, because, the brain develops from 0 to 5. So it's, the cliche again is to blame our parents, but who you're mostly with from 0 to 5 when the brain is developing. So it's not about blame, it's about understanding. I'll never forget the day I understood myself. I was at a conference on attachment, and he was describing this type of attachment connection, and he was describing me. And then I couldn't take enough information about it, and I finally understood myself, and I went, oh, and then I could heal it.
Wow.
So that's the piece I'll be talking about.
And Karie, what are you going to be talking about during this fabulous webinar?
I love that part, Shirley, because that's how I felt with family constellation therapy. I thought, like, I felt the second I stepped into my parents' shoes, I was like, oh, my whole life makes sense. So I am going to be geeking out about all things family systems. So I will be diving into the how, the what, the who, the when, and definitely giving people tips and tricks to start kind of unkinking that hose.
Oh my
You're
God. And
going to
we're
do
gonna,
a healing.
Yes, I'm going to
right?
do a group
Yes.
family. I'm going to do a group constellation.
Wait.
I cannot wait.
May 19th, you said?
of course, you could take
I'm
it.
dropping in. Are you kidding? You don't use that.
Yay. Yes. Yay.
You're gonna love it, James. It's gonna be great. And I geeked out with spirituality, so it's funny. It's
Oh,
all
yeah.
passions.
Yeah. We're the Charlie's Angels of healing. I'm convinced.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm Charlie.
Oh my gosh.
That's right, James. You're Charlie.
Yes. And then
Yeah,
actually you can go to my website, but it shouldn't be Kellee. It's KELLEE white.com healing. So Renee, it's called Roots of Healing, and it's you can find it on Facebook, you can find it on Instagram, and you can find it on my Facebook. But it's Kellee KELLEE
that's right.
White.
You're
I'm
Oh, there
EE.
she is. There is KellyWhite.com.
There you go.
I never
So go
realized
check that
that
out.
Lee, it's Lee, L-E-E,
Yeah.
because of your dad. That's his name.
Talk about family constellations.
Oh, I
we
didn't
can
notice
go
that
on about
either.
that. Yeah, it was my dad's dad who actually his brother did this, killed a Cossack. Yeah, I mean, it's a whole deal there. Kellee,
All
yeah.
I Kelly's, by the way, and I really am a yoga instructor. I'm a brand new yoga instructor with another Kelli. Every single spelling of Kelly's are in my life. Kelly's and Brian's is all I have. It's the weirdest thing.
So,
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing. And I'm going to be doing this Friday a demonstration this Friday night at 6:00 right here on my website, vetprog.com. And Mediumship 1 for people that are interested in signing up May 19th. I'll book from now until May 19th. And it's filling up. It's going to be a limited amount of people, but you can sign up also at the JVP School of Mystical Arts. Oh, here we go. Online Evening of Spirit this Friday and vetprog.com. And then if you want to go to the JVP School of Mystical Arts, you can sign up for the Mediumship 1 class, which I only offer every 2 to 3 years. So
I'll never forget when I started to tag along with Kelly. And she started to work with
you
me.
were good.
Oh my
so good.
God.
I said, Shirley, you're a Pisces. Now come on. You're like, I can't. My left brain does not work with the right brain. You can do it, Shirley.
So fascinated.
Go with the right
with it.
brain. Go to the right brain. It's okay.
I know. You know what though? I think I like being intuitive. I don't have an interest in that. I think I was killed in a past life. And it kind of scares me a little.
You were killed for your belief system.
Yes,
a lot of people.
yes. But oh my God, blown away so many times. I have so many distinct, and my memory isn't great. Karie and Kelly will vouch for that. But some distinct memories of when you would, channel, I guess,
you brought through spirit incredibly well.
And the healing. I mean, I could visibly, since I do the somatic work, I can visibly see the people and their body would just calm and relax in getting that message. And I just thought, oh, this is so powerful. I loved it.
I remember I looked and said, hello. Right?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, we had so much fun, and we were talking about cruises. Karie, you're gonna have to come with us.
So
Karie.
fun.
Karie, you gotta go with us.
So fun.
Greece next year when it opens up. We'll do Greece.
I can't wait. This is a great question, everybody. It's from Joanne Wilson. How do we forgive ourselves for having suicidal thoughts?
Oh.
Well, the question is, do we have to? I think it's more understanding.
Yeah.
When we use the word forgive, that means that implies that it's something bad or wrong. And I think it's more understanding why. Be curious about why did that thought come up. I think almost everyone has had a suicidal thought, even if it's a light one, like I'd rather not be here, or this is, so I think it's understanding, not forgiving.
But
because
it's also, Shirley, when you think it's also in a way suicide, because it's ending. It's change, it's transitions, it's endings. And we all have thoughts about things ending, new phases coming in, new waves coming in, waves go out, and things move. Life is about movements, and things are always changing and always moving. So suicide is just something ending. It'll still continue. People think suicide's the end. It'll continue on the other side. Won't be as easy probably, but you'll continue still having those thoughts, and you don't get away from yourself.
Yeah, it's a curiosity of what feels so bad or so insurmountable or so overwhelming that I had this thought. So be curious, and that lends itself to self-compassion as well.
Yeah. And that's really where all healing comes from is self-compassion.
And I'm going to throw something out here too, and it's just a theory I have, and I don't know if it's right. I just like everyone to comment on it. I think, I don't know, that the soul, when they go through life, there are some times when something happens in their life, and maybe they get sick, or they get a headache, or something happens with part of their body, or they can't breathe, or something. I often think that that's a soul memory, that in a past life, they would have passed at that time, maybe from being choked or hung, maybe from drowning, and the soul kind of remembers at that age. Is that kind of weird, Karie? Have you heard anything like that? It's kind of.
That's so
I feel like that's similar to family constellation therapy, because like I can use myself as an example. My gifts always felt like life or death to me. Like it really felt like if I come out of the closet, I am going to be whacked instantly. And there were I grew up with my dad's side, but I didn't grow up with my mom's side. And then I found out much later in life that my grandmother was incredibly, incredibly intuitive, and they told her she was crazy. They did all this really gnarly shit to her. And so, but it was like the same ages where I started to like have that constriction in my body. So in family systems intergenerationally, I can sometimes see it at very specific points that mirror somebody that came before.
Well, it's funny because when I do my workshops with people, I do past life regression sometimes, and on the mediumship course, and people get afraid of the mediumship sometimes because and we find that in the past life again, Kellee, because they died for their belief system. They were into spiritualism, or and they died for it because the religious time. So that soul memory continues on.
Yeah.
The trauma, if you will, soul trauma.
It's like a cellular imprint. Shirley, I love that you talked about like suicide having that door open. I think of that with Hemingway. It's like that imprint in the genetic biome is bananas. I mean, 7 or 8 of them, so I feel that way about past life stuff too, until you clear it,
And how do you do an imprint, Shirley? How do you do that? How do you clear the imprint? Do you just go in there and unwind it all, or?
Well, that's where I think you guys come in as far as from an energetic standpoint. From a somatic standpoint, you'll see if that imprint, has created any kind of feelings in your body or any kind of pains in your body or any kind of, could be that, from an energetic standpoint, it's also translating into a physical standpoint. So maybe you have stomach pains and you find out that someone committed suicide through a knife in their stomach or got killed that way or something. And so we take the time to just notice the sensation, even if it's pain, and just observe it and see what happens next. And the most amazing things happen next that can heal that.
So let me just bring this one step further, because my mind is thinking always. And Kellee, you might have dealt with this, that someone, we're all one, we're all connected. So someone in your family and generation before suicide, but is it maybe a part of you also that was in that soul, right? Because we're all part of each other. And how do we not know that there's an aspect or part of the great-great-grandparent that we still carry with us, that memory, that we experienced that in that lifetime? I don't know, just something I think about, that we're, why separate it so much? It could be all part of the soul.
Yeah.
Just an interesting thought, right? Because we think this world, this three-dimensional world of separation, is the biggest illusion we have, is separation and death. Two biggest illusions. There is no separation. We're all connected as one, but the illusions are separate. But even as souls, we're part of each other. And I don't know, when people say with suicide, or the other side, how can you speak with them if they're reincarnated? Well, there's an aspect, a part of that soul that you knew, the personality you knew here on the earth, still exists on another level. But also maybe like us, most of who we are is outside the body. Only 40% is in the body. Most of our souls outside the body, experiencing different worlds, different things. Who knows, right? It's an interesting thought that I had, that maybe we are part of that whole situation, of those generations and those traumas, and it makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, it
Oh, I
does.
think you're
It
right
does.
on.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this is a fascinating conversation.
Great topic.
Unbelievable. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Shirley, and thank you, Karie.
Thanks, Karie. Thanks, Shirley.
Really,
Thanks,
everybody,
Renee.
join us on May
Nice to meet you,
22nd.
Karie.
It was lovely to meet you.
This is
And
great.
we'll see you May 19th.
Exactly. May 22nd. And you'll be busy
May
on
22nd.
April 30th, this Friday. So
Yes, it's Friday, my demo. Yes, anyone who gets tickets, please go to the website. Yes. Okay,
take
thanks,
care,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
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 You've been listening to Both Sides Now and Beyond, featuring spiritual medium and master teacher James Van Praagh, and spiritual medium and psychotherapist Kellee White.
The James and Kellee Show.